in the, again, practice, I'm going to refer to the notes on some things, but we're going to stick to this. So, first part first. Sketch the graph of the line after finding the x and the y intercepts. So that is going to be similar to what we were doing in the notes yesterday, where we'd set the one variable equal to 0 and solve for the other. I'm actually going to jump to number 2 because it's got a little more complexity to it. So if I come over here and I'm looking for my x-intercept, that occurs when y equals 0. So I start to write this equation, and when I get to the variable y, I replace it with 0. Well, when you multiply by 0, that makes things go away because 0 times anything is 0. So that kind of just says we'll see you later to this. And now all of a sudden I just have a one-step equation, and that's not bad. But I think I'm going to get a decimal. That's not as fun, but that's okay. All right. But whenever we write an intercept, they're always going to be coordinates. Thank you. So there we want 7.50. Don't just leave it as x equals 7.5, because if we do, now we're just saying it's a vertical line, and that's not what this is. So 7.50, of course Hardy has to get one in here that doesn't fit on the graph. What the heck? So x-axis, 6, 7, and a little more. Unfortunately, that got a little out of control. But we did do it right. And then we're going to play with the y-intercept. Bless you. When x is 0. So when we get to x, that becomes 0. And just like it did on the other, when that goes, that cancels out. So 2 times 0 is 0, which just leaves me with 5y equals 15. And very quickly, I can go ahead and find the y value of my y-intercept. But again, I don't just leave it as y equals 3. There's my y-intercept, which goes on the y-axis, which means I start at 0 and I go up 1, 2, 3, and I put a dot. And I've got my 2 dots. I know we like 3 dots with lines, but when we do intercepts, we only get 2. And I go ahead and I sketch my graph. So that top section, that's all you're going to do with those. They are set up wonderfully in standard form for you to be able to find x and y intercepts like we were doing yesterday. Then we're going to rewind. So before I kind of start to scroll down, the first day that we were working on this, we talked about slope-intercept form. So I'm going to make a note on that as we move the sheet down. If I got to move it back up here in a minute, I will. So for instance, if I'm doing number 5, when we go to do these, there's my form. I always do my y-intercept first. I always do my slope second. So I'm going to be very descriptive on here. You don't have to go to this extent. But here, my y-intercept is at -2. It's the number on the end hanging out on its own. So that first dot's always going to be somewhere here on the y-axis. Now the slope is where it gets more interesting. That negative only goes on one of the 2 numbers, not both. It doesn't matter which number you put it on. And so if we go back to our rise over run that we chatted about when we were playing with slope, I squeeze it in there. There it is. We're going to be going 3 down and 5 right. And this is on the first page of the notes. So we're going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we actually can get a third point with this. And we chatted about this as well the other day. You can switch these. So you could, if you needed to, put the negative down below, and all of a sudden we're going up 3 and left 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I've got my third point that would be right on my line if I would have used a straight edge. I probably should have. So you have choices. You have options with those. And the only other thing I'll say for this section before I move to something else is, if you ever have slope and it's not a fraction, please, please, please put it over 1 so you remember the right one part and you don't just get all these lines that are going up and down, because I see that happen a whole lot. Okay. Do I have any twists on the back? Oh, not really. Well, do I? Wait a minute. Number 9. I want to help with one thing, and then I'm going to leave this one. If you have x and y on the same side, I would just find the intercepts and graph it. I wouldn't worry about putting it into y equals. But if it's not just x and y on a side, this is me, I would go ahead and get it in slope-intercept form because it's going to be easier. So here's how we would go about that. Remember, y equals mx plus b. We always want the x part right after the equals. The number part is going to be after that. I can't put them together. It's not negative 11x. And to get y by itself, we're going to divide by 3. And I get to the equation that I want my y-intercept and my slope, just like the last example that we did. Just want to make sure that we got everybody on the same page with that. So if it's set up nice for intercepts, do intercepts. I can still get that into y equals, but otherwise, we want to get that set. Last piece. Last piece. Find the slope of a line parallel, same slope, to each given line. Bless you. So again, we pick one. Might as well do the first one here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get these into y equals. That's going to be our only job. So we box in that y term. We want that y term there first. We're adding 5x to it. We need to undo adding 5x to it. And again, these are not like terms. We put the x part first. Last step typically is going to be to divide. And here's why we needed to do this. I'm going to leave that as a fraction because I got a decimal when I put it in that way. All you have to do once you get here is you take the slope that you just found, negative 5/4, the slope of your line parallel is going to be the same. You're just letting me know, hey, I know the slope of another line would be the same as this one. So this slope was negative 5/4. That's what I want. And you're done. Nothing else to do, no other equations to make, anything like that. However, if we do the perpendicular, this is the last one. This is the one where we went the crazy big words yesterday, the opposite reciprocal. I'll explain that when we get to it here in a moment. So I look and I'm like, okay, we'll do the first one, last one. My first job, I'm adding 2x to it. I gotta undo that. Again, that 5 is positive. It was the beginning. We don't want to change that. We're going to divide everything by -1, because y wasn't by itself otherwise then. So negative divided by negative is positive. Positive divided by negative is negative. Okay, this one I just have to think a little bit. There's the slope of my original line. The slope of the line that's going to be perpendicular changes the sign. This was positive, so this will be negative. And then just flip the fraction over. That's it. You're just looking for the line, the slope of the line it's going. Change the sign of your original slope once y is alone, and then flip it. That's all you're doing. Okay? I do have a key online. I've got a worked out key in front too if you don't want to be messing with the Chromebook because you're afraid you're going to get distracted. And then let's just work on this. And if you needed some help on some stuff,